Nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Live Loud Life podcast. My name is Dr. Antonio, your host, and I am excited to chat with my good friend, Janelle. And you have to pronounce your
It's Orsborn.
Orsborn, because I heard you say this the other day on something online. I was like,
Yep.
I'm saying it wrong. I felt
Not
bad.
Osborne. Yeah.
Orsborn.
That's all right.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. So glad to be here.
We're going to jump in because I think we're going to chat for a while. We want to get it in. But tell everyone who you are and what you're, I guess, doing now. And
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a body worker for about 13 years now. I was 17 when I graduated from massage therapy school, and it was kind of on a whim that I, decided to do this, which of course it's always, perfect and divine, but it was this like coin toss between hair school and bodywork school. And then while I was in massage school, I ended up falling in love with just the healing art form of bodywork and where that's been able to take me. So my journey with that has been, learning so many different people's bodies, but then where like they're storing trauma in the body, where they're storing pain and how the pain is manifesting. And so that kind of set me on my path of not only learning more about trauma therapy and the way that the body literally holds trauma, but also my own healing journey of working with my mental health, my anxiety, some depression. And so now I'm working kind of in more the psychedelic space, actually, is where I'm really fascinated with as far as how psychedelics are designed to literally heal our physical bodies as well as our minds, and how those two things work so well together.
Why do you think, because these psychedelics, these plant therapies, obviously they've been around for a really long time, right?
Totally.
Why did it get so, I guess, like not mainstream, and now being so not mainstream, but, in this push of a lot, it's because they're doing a lot of great studies with it, PTSD and veterans and different things like that now, obviously. So that's getting up there where it's fairly mainstream, where they want to be able to give this to people.
Absolutely, which is kind of a loaded question, because you always think like, why did these things that have been around for thousands of years, in jungles and tribes have been using these therapies, these plants to heal themselves, their families for generations. So I think, abuse in the 50s, 60s, 70s, people not having a lot of maybe awareness around like the how and then just
parents.
Yeah. And then also I always wonder too, just, plant therapy is really effective, and you can't really make a lot of money if people are healing and then getting better, and there's not a great business model in healthy people. And so I sometimes just wonder, is this that might be a rabbit hole of a conversation, but can you make money? The pharmaceutical industries, can you make money on plant medicines? So I'll really be curious to see, as the research comes through with psychedelic assisted therapy, specifically how they're going to regulate that, as they have kind of with the cannabis industry. So psychedelics specifically are, I consider those in the realm of MDA, MDMA, and psilocybin, which is derived from the mushroom.
No, that's a really good point, because so is it, from my understanding, the way that it's being used now is not so much on a personal use. It's more, is it always guided assisted?
Research. Well, there's right now, it's all just done in research settings, legally. Obviously, there's the people, who are willing to go there and just administer and be facilitators of plant medicine work that's not necessarily done in a legal through the regulation. But, and that's how I've done a lot of my own healing, has just been through working with facilitators who are, extremely knowledgeable. They just might not be FDA regulated and done in like a therapeutic setting in that regard.
So what, I guess, interests you being younger, right? And dealing with anxiety, some depression, and different things like that, when mostly what we hear is either medication or just standard, or even just standard therapy. Not to say that those are, we think a lot of times with those, therapy is a good start, and then if that doesn't work, then sometimes it goes further. But how did you first hear about this, and what like really piqued your interest in it?
Well, I know just in the reflection of you're really a creator at heart. And this is a form of healing as an artist. This is my artistry to be a healer, because no individual everyone's individual. And so there's no two people that are going to be alike in their healing. And that was for me too. And so when I was, having these feelings of anxiety in my body and these, really dark, like depressive thoughts, I was like, this can't be, my body's not deficient in a medication. That's not how I was made. Like I wasn't made to be deficient in medication. So there's something dysregulated in my system, in my physical system. And so I really just became my own experiment of like, I'm a creative person. We're all creative. We're all creators on some level and in some fashion. And so why would I want to numb or minimize my gifts and my connection with God in the name of, being healthy. And so I just, it set me on a course of what is mental health really? And why is my body dysregulated?
Were there things that you tried before?
Yeah, I was in talk therapy for years, 3 years of sitting once a week with like a therapist. And it was, of course, there's which all modalities and tools are helpful. That's a long time. Yeah. But I just found that I wasn't in my physical body. There was a disassociation between my physical experience and then what was going on in my mind. And that will happen with a lot of really creative people. They'll live so up in their head that they rarely will be able to drop in. And trauma also is a factor of not wanting to fully drop in the body if there's been physical trauma, or if there's just a really deep sense of fear state to be in the body. And so the vagus nerve has really been what I've been, passionate about studying, is how can we regulate the vagus nerve, which is the rest and digest kind of nerve. So when you stimulate this nerve, your body's able to actually fall into a rest state instead of being in like a fight or flight mode. And so you can actually just do that through breath work. And so that's really where I started as well. In therapy and then in breathwork, I was having tremendous breakthrough, and I facilitate breathwork journeys on retreats and one-on-one sessions as well. And you create an altered state of consciousness when you're in that deep of a parasympathetic state. You drop into the delta brainwave state, and your brain is actually able to regulate itself again, instead of having so many chemicals from being in fight or flight that you just become so dysregulated that I was literally disassociated from what am I even feeling, because my mind is running away with itself.
Yeah.
And so then I found, plant medicine, again, kind of by accident, but it was recommended to me by several people before I finally said yes.
This is a big step. Like, you say what? Like, what?
Yeah, I had actually worked with the Board of Health in Colorado when I was in my early 20s.
Oh, cool.
And I was extremely opposed to a lot of the bills and the things, the legislation that they were passing around cannabis and regulation of cannabis. I'm not really familiar with that plant specifically, and but it's just unique, the journey I've been on, because I was so rigid and fixated in my mind, thinking like all drugs are bad and medicine that is regulated by the FDA is good. And I think that there's kind of a really big gap between the psychedelic space and Western medicine. And so that's just been a journey in and of itself for me, is coming into the surrender of like, wow, there's probably a lot that we actually aren't utilizing, because it's going to heal people and it's not going to keep people dependent on medication.
Yeah. Which is, and that's, I think what's also hard too is, it's funny, you may have heard this before, because a pastor at a church said it, right? It's like drugs work. If your drugs didn't work, you got sold bad drugs, right? Yep. But I think what's so hard now, especially in our society, is we want that, like, I want to be better yesterday. And when you like take when you take certain medication, like, they are pretty potent and they do work some wonders, but it's like that thing you were talking about is like systemically getting down to things, not just covering up, not just trying to balance certain levels because the chart said to do that.
Right. If you're trying to balance certain levels, there's probably a Band-Aid kind of situation that's being put on a real underlying issue of, for me, it was just a lot of, dysregulated, like, stuff from childhood that I had never really been able to sit with and face. And, and then it set me on the spiritual journey of really kind of deconstructing my faith and being like, what do I actually believe in? What really is like my purpose? Because it can't just be to like stay on this hamster wheel of just medicating my own anxiety and depression, it has to be medicine. And that became my agreement with myself, was like, I'll only go where there's medicine, because medication for me just keeps me and keeps anyone that I will come in contact with as a healer kind of just on that pendulum as well, or on that hamster wheel.
And oftentimes creates dependency issues and all that other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which again, I mean, I don't know enough about all those medications, and obviously certain medications work well in certain situations.
Yeah, there's a really interesting, there's been a few books that I've read that have really felt resonant in the way that I approach my own healing and the people that I work with now in their healing journeys. But The Body Keeps the Score, I'm sure you're familiar with that book. And if not, it's worth reading if you feel like there's maybe chronic pain in your body that isn't from anything, or even like chronic anxiety, because chronic anxiety is a really good indicator that there's probably something in your life that's out of alignment, because that was really my indicator. And I was like, why am I so anxious? And it was really just that I wasn't in alignment with a lot of things in my life, a relationship, the way in which I had structured my life, where I almost was structuring a life that I couldn't like afford. And then I was working super hard to keep up with it. And so there was just a lot that wasn't in alignment.
Which is very common for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. And so it got me on this spiritual journey of like deconstructing my faith, really coming into like some honesty with myself. Yeah. And when I started down the pathway of psychedelics, it was unique because the word psychedelic literally means to reveal the soul. And so when I like read that and then really sat with that, I was like, it's not it can't be an escape route if you're really doing it.
Yeah, it's going towards
you're really doing it. You're going straight to meet yourself. And I remember the first time I ever worked with the psilocybin medicine, I was like, am I gonna like meet a demon? Like, I don't want any crazy stuff to happen. And my facilitator and good friend now, she was like, well, if you have a demon inside you, like you'll meet that. You meet whatever you need to meet in order to be able to really like basically just love that part of myself. And so, and that's my approach to healing, is like, where in yourself are you not, because love is the ultimate medicine ever, like period, end of story. And so then just how can I as a healer then hold the space for myself to alchemize that thing in me that's fear driven, or that's ego driven, that's out of alignment? Can I love this part of myself to be able to alchemize it, to then be able to love it, because love will ultimately heal it. And that has probably been the biggest motto that I approach in any journey or anything that I facilitate. And my body's just been completely shifted since working with psychedelics. I've lost weight that I like was carrying that I wasn't even, it was just emotional. Yeah. Almost like armor protection. I have I'm just more clear and been able to integrate then, because the other side of this work is integration. I've been able to integrate to structure a life that can actually support my healing and not just stay on the hamster wheel. Yeah. And that's been the most profound part of this work. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's definitely for those who are just hungry for the truth, because we're not meant to be in pain. We're not meant to suffer. That could not be our birthright ever. And so for me, the journey has been not only from a physical standpoint, but it's actually taken me very much into the spiritual aspect of healing.
Because one thing I remember us talking about in the past in a framework of mindset and different things like that. One thing that I've heard is like anxiety is basically the separation between expectation and reality. Wow. Right. So we set certain expectations on certain, and then when you don't meet it, right, you just get all flustered, and which is tough because that can be misconstrued with goals and different things like that. But that's something I know I've struggled with, is like I have this expectation of what something should be or where I should be from a business standpoint, a father, a partner, and all those things. And then when I don't meet that, it's kind of like, kind of upset, or that's that anxiousness, right? So how have in that kind of maybe thought of expectations in reality, and not necessarily goal setting, but just mindset wise, like being able to think about the future, right? strive for that greatness and the future, and understanding when certain maybe milestones and things don't match up with that.
Yeah. Like I said, we're all creators. And so we're all creating our reality, and we create the future, but we will miss whatever's meant for us if we're not in the present moment. And so the work that I've done in myself I'm 29 now, and I kind of started this work really in depth around 27. And so the last 2 years have been all in, giving myself over to the present moment, not to anything that I could be in the future. Because if I'm not present with myself and my work now, then the future that I'm going to create is going to literally just be more of the same, more separation between what the way I think it should be and the way it is.
Brick by brick, right?
Yeah. And it's like, as it sounds simple, but it's actually the most profound, potent thing in the world is the present moment. Like, we had no idea what we were going to talk about really when we sat down to do this podcast. And so if we are anywhere else but here, our medicine of these words and this conversation isn't even that. It doesn't really mean anything if we're already thinking about, where we're going to be after this. So it's the slowing down, creating a lifestyle, cultivating a lifestyle where I can be present enough to then create a future reality that is, it's true, I guess, because that's really ultimately what we're all after, is the truth. The truth just can be a bit abrasive sometimes if there is a lot out of alignment.
Yeah. No, it's true. So I'm curious. So obviously now everything we've been talking about, right, has been more from an intervention of something happened. We're trying to clear or work through some things. And I don't know if it's even come to mind, which if it hasn't, move forward on something else. But we can't avoid trauma. Trauma comes up.
Right.
Shit happens, as they say. Right?
Totally.
But from an early standpoint, for maybe like younger kids and middle schoolers and high schoolers, or maybe we don't want to intervene with psilocybin and things like that, and those types of medicines, is like having discussions around how to deal with those things and work through those things, or understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. There are tribes that are, in different parts of Peru. I was, as I've researched plant medicines, where like 12-year-olds will drink ayahuasca with their dads. And I'm like, oh, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
But
maybe they do need to do it earlier on, just like,
I feel for me, what would have been so helpful for me as a child was to I was given tremendous space by my parents, and they absolutely have done like an incredible job. I'm the oldest of 6 kids.
Yeah.
But I think where I've noticed that parents can sometimes, they set the expectations for their children. And rather than just allowing the child who comes full of purpose, fully tapped into their heart and who they are, and then they come into a reality that might not fully reflect, they might not be given space to fully let that be expressed. And so for me, I noticed a big part of my journey was the expectations that I maybe were feeling were imposed by my family, by the church that I went to, by the just the way that I was raised.
Meaning like to do certain things, or
to be just like the level in which I was expected to show up from a really young age. Obviously, there was some trauma in my childhood as well, but as far as like you have young kids, and so just kind of being like, there's a really great song by Need to Breathe called Banks, and it talks about being the banks to a river, where it's like, all right, I've been operating in this world for longer than you, but you're actually the medicine for this next wave of consciousness to come through. Children are, I believe. And so it's like holding the kid, these children in such a way that they can bring their medicine of their heart to the world. And then just like, giving them food and water and like enough a place to sleep, and they will honestly figure it out. And I think the biggest thing for me has just been deconstructing my own shoulds so that I can be the medicine that the world needs as well. And so I can't wait to have my own children someday, that they can come and show me the way instead of me thinking I could ever have anything to teach them.
I did a episode with his name is Dr. Bill Morgan. He's one of our mentors. He's the president of Parker College of Chiropractic. He's been a chiropractor for so many years.
Wow.
He treated Congress members. Like, dude is amazing. And so we were talking about leadership, and it came up as parenting and all that else. It's like the biggest thing that I've learned about parenting, it is the biggest reflection on myself. If everything that comes out of me based on a certain situation is just like, if I'm my oldest son, we're the ones that butt heads the most. But as like something happens, I'm getting to it. I was like, I'm literally like, I'm almost looking at myself as I'm doing it. It's like, I'm not even mad at him.
No, it's actually the part of you that maybe isn't, again, where am I not fully loving myself, that this is still triggering me on some level, or I'm having this like perceived negative emotion around this like child. And so I completely could see how that was
which is always super curious too, like where and how it gets built up through the generations or whatever it is. I mean, we came from Catholic Hispanic on one side of my family, right? And that's like pretty rigid to the bone. Not that my parents were super were, but I'm curious too within that is, I don't know, I think the biggest thing is just being adaptable, right? And that's the hardest part. Different kids need different things, different people need different things, and understanding what that level is, because some people work really well with more, the banks are tighter.
Absolutely.
Whereas you open it up, and then
I was a kid that needed like maybe just like a little bit of banks, and I was just a full river. And I think I was given really tight, this is how it needs to be done. And so it, just for any parents listening, like if you can just really feel your children, not just listen to them and see, but like feel them, like, and just trust that their heart is fully tapped into, they know the way.
Yeah.
And that, you might have more experience, operating a car and like knowing how to buy food at a grocery store, but like, the children just really understand, and that they are our greatest teachers if we can feel them and like give them the space to really let themselves be heard. I know that so many parents are probably like, yeah, my kids say like the most, they have no filter. And it's because they're really just tapped in and they won't hold back, because the ego hasn't been able to come online for children fully. Around like age 7 is when like that first 7-year cycle hits, and a child's really able to first start to develop the ego, which is really just our fear manager, our trauma manager. And so a lot of plant medicine will disillusion the ego for us to show us where our heart maybe like was put on the back burner so that we could manage our fear.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because really our heart is how, for me, I'm like committed so much to living from a heart space of what wants to come through me into the world, that I had to kind of, it's been a bit of a death to some of the things that I thought that I wanted, and have still like formed a little bit of attachment to, whether it be, I mean, all the way to like relationships I thought I wanted, or, I want to live in this kind of a house, or I want to, and so now I'm just so committed to, honestly, to love and to healing myself and being medicine for so many people, that I'm kind of having to even surrender. And again, I'm about to turn 30 into like, all right, well, that's not how I thought where I was gonna be at 30, and but even like surrendering to that too, of like, if I'm just continuing to stay present and listening truly to what my heart is saying, which is a cultivated practice, and it was something that honestly I didn't know how to do 2 years ago, really, without the work that I've done.
That's awesome. So back to kids.
Yeah.
How? I mean, I think one of the hardest parts, because obviously this is what we're talking about, is parents and kids at home and whatnot.
Right.
And I'm more so just kind of curious, because we're starting this journey of potentially homeschooling our kids, and your homeschool journey, being one of 6 kids and everything else. Totally. And did that make it too hard? Because you living together, and then you're doing school together, which is good, because it's, more time with family, but sometimes it's almost too much, where getting out into different things.
Yeah, I think I was like my parents, like, I was their oldest, so I was like the child, and like all of my siblings, I'm sure, like it was just, I'm lucky that I got to be the oldest in my family. However, there's just a lot of trial and error. And so for me, I think it was amazing to be homeschooled, but it was the integration into like society. Cause I always knew like I was special. And I guess like every kid has that. Like I know that I'm special. And it was almost like I had to, I didn't have enough, integration into like being with other kids to see like, where am I at? Like with, because I just only hung out with other homeschool kids and it was awesome. And we're still great friends today, but I almost like dumbed myself down to go into society because I was just this really bright, vibrant kid, but I would like go into society and my parents did the best they could, like signing me up for sports and gymnastics. But really I was like, man, like it's not like resonating with me to do all these different activities. Like I want to interact with kids who are like me, but not maybe just like all homeschool kids or like all just church kids or all there needs to be like a diversity in it, I guess.
Did that add to any of the stress, anxiety and stuff that you were feeling in that kind of early young adulthood?
Definitely.
You think that's part of it?
Yeah. I think
because that's heavy when you're running your life one way, right?
Yeah, it's
like, wait, that world operates like this?
And I would absolutely homeschool my kids. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have said that a few years ago, but I see the value of like being able to cultivate so many things that you wouldn't be able to in like a public school system or, but there's some incredible like Montessori school systems
for sure,
now, and just like more classically educated, I think is the way that a child will learn best.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're obviously Bowden, our oldest he's only in kindergarten.
Yeah.
But I mean, homeschool is honestly great. Like we wake up, we kick it early.
Heck
he's
yeah.
done, he's done. He's at least from kindergarten standards, he's doing good.
Yeah. And where I think is cool too, is then the child can be on their own rhythm. Like every person has like their own body rhythm, their own work ethic. And so where I think like my mom was just trying to like be captain of a really busy ship. She had 6 of us. And so she was like structure and, you need to be up at this time. But had I been given a little more space to be like, man, I actually work best at 11 o'clock at night. So I should just like, that's when I should do my school, you know, when I was like in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. I've never really had like a job. And so I do owe that to being homeschooled of like, what a gift that I have my own kind of work ethic and I'm a self-starter. And I never really had anyone other than my parents telling me like, your assignments are due here. Yeah. So I'm excited for you guys and homeschooling is going to be amazing.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Slightly scared though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell me about some of the other newer adventures and things that you're getting into.
Yeah. So plant medicine can be like a kind of abrasive thing if you're just new to it or if it's not been something that's been introduced, because I know that it really was for me. And so there's a plant medicine that I'm really, really loving right now called cacao. And it's literally just like the whole cocoa bean that they ground up and it has the full fat in it, but it can be a beautiful stimulant for the body rather than drinking coffee in the morning, which stimulates your brain. And a lot of people say it just magnifies their anxiety. And so I've switched to drinking cacao about 2 years ago. And that's been an incredible shift for my body as well. It's there's really high magnesium in cacao. There's a lot of micronutrients, antioxidants that create just like a really beautiful heart opening experience that it's a stimulant as well. So it gives this really beautiful feeling to the body as like one would want when they drink coffee without like the jitters of drinking caffeine. So I started a cacao little label called Cocoa Love. And that's my way to start sharing plant medicine with people. Because once you'll try cacao, you're more willing to like have the conversation maybe about a different plant medicine.
Get your foot in the door, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we've been talking about children a lot. And so I wrote a children's book,
nice.
Which will be out in the new year. It's still kind of in the development stages, but preserving that inner child, because so much trauma work and so much therapy. I'm like, man, if we could just like reach the 5-year-old, which is where all plant medicine journeys will take you to at one point, or breathwork journeys, they'll always take you back to that inner child at some point, because that's the truth. And so I wrote a children's book that's going to be out, which is really exciting. And then have been facilitating retreats with some of my best friends. We all kind of created a platform called Pursuing Purpose that we've been able to do some healing retreats and take people on this adventure of healing themselves as well.
That's awesome. Talk about a little bit more about the retreats. How long are they?
The retreats are about 4 to 7 days long, and those are amazing. But they're kind of like, the thing for me was I started on my healing journey alone, and what I love that you guys are building here is a sense of community, because I think, you can heal without a lot of different things, but if you're like feeling isolated and alone, it's almost impossible to really feel seen, heard, loved, encouraged, like all the things we want to feel to operate at a high frequency.
No doubt. I mean, isolation is the
leading cause of a lot of disease.
Well, and the thing that everyone has been suffering from over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Which is probably another rabbit hole. But so for me and for my team, we just were like, we want like a holistic experience where someone can come experience breath work, cacao.
Yeah.
We don't work with psychedelics on our retreats yet, but but just to be able to experience these holistic modalities and do it in community where they're held in a container. And that's just been profound. And so those are through pursuing purpose, and then just following along on my Instagram, which is just in my first and last name, Janelle Orsborn, which is a great way to kind of keep up with the work that I do, just one-on-one, and then also in a group setting, which I also facilitate breathwork journeys here in Denver.
Sweet.
So if people are interested in trying breathwork, that's a great way to get your foot in the door of altered states of consciousness, because it's really your own breath. It's just a hyper oxygenated state.
Yeah.
So blood alkaline levels shift, and all of a sudden you're having this semi-psychedelic experience without really even taking a substance. And so people that are hesitant to try, I completely understand. And that's why I became a breathwork facilitator as well, to be able to offer that medicine and experience.
Where do you hold those in Denver?
There's a social club called Archipelago Clubs. It's fantastic. There's a lot of different healers, teachers.
That's awesome.
There. And and so that's been really fun. I've also studied, this is getting into a whole nother conversation, but I've been studying the gene keys. And so the gene keys are basically based on the amino acids in your body and the way that they vibrate. They can be in a shadow state or a really high frequency state, and then how to elevate those amino acids to be in the highest vibrational state where disease really can't exist.
What were some of the interventions to make that shift be? Is that nutritional and plant-based, or
you can actually supplement amino acids through but it's first of all just knowing what your gene keys are. There's 11 of them, and they're based on astrology and the Chinese I Ching. And so I've been really kind of diving into studying our own, like each of us have an individual genetic makeup, so we'll each have a different way that our body understands itself.
Yeah.
My purpose in life is different than your purpose, but we both have purpose.
100%.
And so it's just being able to work with people as an individual has been my biggest passion, because one medicine is not going to work for everyone. And my passion has just been like making sure that anyone that comes in front of me feels seen by all of the modalities that I've been able to work on healing myself. My purpose in the gene keys is boundlessness.
Yeah. And
there's literally boundless expressions of love and healing. And I've kind of just been on the journey of discovering what works for me.
Which I think is so good, right? Because it's, well, A, someone who's been through the trenches, right? But B, it's just for someone who's been just, I mean, lack of a better term, just like stuck. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And having someone that can help navigate that, all the different possibilities. Because it's good, as we said, talk therapy is great. Certain medications run their purpose, body work serves their purpose, but someone who can do it all.
It's even the energy that you set all of those modalities with. It's like, this serves its purpose. Your voice tonation goes down, and it's like, I love to talk about things that are like fun. Like really, it's like having a dance party is fun. Like that's medicine. And sometimes that will elevate my frequency into like a completely different state where, then I'm like, oh, that was just fun, and laughter, like things that, and so community has been huge for that. And so I love the work that you're doing to kind of build a community place here too.
Yeah.
Because that's profound. Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I learned some cool things.
Yes. Thank you.
Looking to see, I'm not hitting the ice bath tonight with you guys, but next time for sure.
Yeah.
But I love following all your stuff. Thanks for sharing. Looking forward to seeing where everything goes with that.
Yeah. Thanks for the work you're doing too. And you can find me on Instagram. You can find me Archipelago Clubs Denver, and just follow along and see kind of how you can come get involved with the work I'm doing privately, one-on-one, or in community as well. And
we'll put those in the show notes, so we get all those links.
Awesome.
Right. All right. Thanks, guys. Live loud.
Cheers.